We are now live. So Josh, who is presenting, can begin to panic. Um, I actually want to give just a minute so we can get as many people in here watching before Josh starts his presentation. This is a project I worked on or worked alongside Josh on, and it's one of the coolest things I've seen done with can.Component. So I really want as many people to be able to see it as possible. So to kill just a minute, we're changing the format of the CanJS Community Hangout just a little bit to where every Friday, rather than having like 30 or 45 minutes of presentations, instead we're just going to have one presentation every Friday. So it's something people can easily digest. It should be no longer than about 15 minutes every week. And then on the first Friday of every month, we're going to have a little bit longer of a CanJS Community Hangout where we'll also talk about the roadmap of CanJS. I may have like a guest speaker, some extra presentations, and yeah, and just and make that one like our big bang one once a month, and then every other one should be just an easy sneak in during your lunchtime, 15 minutes or so. So that said, Josh, who is the horse head here,
Hi.
he actually, well, I'll let you talk about who you are. Yeah, you've been on a bunch of these community hangouts, so I think most people know who you are at this point, but who you are, why we should listen to you, and what it is you're going to talk about today.
I'm Josh. You probably shouldn't listen to me, but I am currently one of the Bitovi folks dealing with open source at Bitovi. I'm also the guy working on the FRP extensions that some of you may have heard of. But right now, I'm also helping with a client project, which involves using a lot of canned components. And I thought I would show off a particularly compelling example of components and how to use them, and hopefully use that as a teaching tool for some to give people ideas on how to use components in the best way that you can. Something like that.
Awesome. Also, I'd just say quickly, thank you to our client gThrive for allowing us to kind of show this to the community. It's a really cool example. It's really great of them to allow us to share it. So, hand it off to you, Josh, if you want to start sharing your screen.
All right.
So this is a component that you wrote for this client?
Yeah, so this is a set of components that I am still working on for a client, so it'll probably break and it'll probably be terrible, but it's going to do something. So I made sure that it would do something about 5 minutes ago. So I kind of want to go top down on this just to kind of show you what this was building. So the idea is, this is very much a demo. This is an application-specific Google Map component that has these. You see, it has this polygon over here. You can edit the polygon, right? You can take these markers and add them around. You can create new polygons. It is just a high-level overview about kind of the sorts of things you can undo, kind of, for the most part. You can remove and add vertices to polygons that you're editing. So, you know, fairly intricate stuff. Most of this just goes straight to the Google APIs, and I'll walk you through that. So let's look at the code that's necessary to implement this specific page, right? Starting from the top, we see we have a template. And the template is this GTMap tag. Now, for those of you familiar with components, this creates a two-way binding between the current scope's map state and these variables. So if the GTMap edits this property in its scope, it's going to set it in the container, in the scope container. And if there is an incoming value through the scope, then this component will see it and it will be set in its scope variable. So what we're doing is we're creating all these two-way bindings between only the variables that we're interested in. You'll notice that I didn't just pass all the user data straight into the component. Then for a quick overview of, and if there's any questions, please feel free to interrupt me. I am trying to work top down here just to make sure that you get an idea of how this ends up working out. We have kind of an arbitrary structure to our data. We have this user over here, and the username has a name, and this can.Edit property, which we will use to determine whether you can actually edit or not. We have this map state, which in this case keeps track of where the actual map is, how zoomed in you are. So this map state, it's changing as I'm going in and out. And then we have these farms. So Thrive, our client, I don't know how much detail I can go into the product, but it's basically products involving farming and measurements and all these stuff. So they have an interest in delineating like fields of farms with these polygons and marking down where their sensors are and all these things. And we use this kind of data structure in this particular case to represent all that data. You'll see that G-links have a latitude and longitude location. They have a title. They have a range. This is just data. It doesn't know anything in particular about how the map is supposed to work. We have information here about the fields and a path that is a set of points that delineates the field. Now, you'll see that I also, just with that code, I can look at, in this case, the G-link represents this marker. If I move this marker, you'll see the circle moves with it. And if I go over here, the latitude and longitude in my application data has changed. So if I were to do data.save, that would update this data in the server directly. And this is all the hookup I have to do at this level.
It's not a model, though, right?
It could be a model.
Oh, yeah, sure.
In this case, it's any kind of observable. I'm using a can map, but ideally this would be a model or a set of models. It doesn't have to be one. You can pass 5 different models, and they'll all edit different properties, depending on how you glue it together.
Yeah.
So that said, I want to show the JavaScript for the GT map. I'm not going to go into detail on this one. I just want to show you that all this is really doing, it's importing some standard stuff. I wrote some utilities, importing the components it's going to use, defining what the attributes you're going to make available for the scope are. These converters let you do something like, the point of these converters, so you can do a GT map and have that work. So you can actually write them in literally into the template. For this Boolean, it means you can do GT map editable, and that'll set it to editable right away. So all you do is you do standard HTML booleans, and this knows how to convert it. Or you can do editable.
Wait, how does that work now? If you just do editable, it will set it to true?
Yep. So basically, in HTML, as you know, this is a way to specify a Boolean property.
Yeah, I didn't know that can did that.
It doesn't, but this thing.
Oh, that does it. Okay. Oh, I see. Because of your setter. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm using the define plugin, which is wonderful, to simply provide these utilities. So it checks if it's a string, and if it's a string, it'll go ahead and convert it properly. Anyway, so this basically defines your components API. This is a very important part here because components are meant to be declarative. You're not, they are very similar to controls on the surface. But in the end, it shouldn't necessarily matter if you do or do not get a property. You should be able to convert it regardless of how you accept the value in.
Here, Josh, I I missed that too. I don't understand how the editable property worked. I don't want to get hung up on it for too
Oh,
long.
okay. So
You
so
can set it.
in HTML, right? So this in HTML is supposed to be treated as a true value, right?
Yeah.
It's an attribute. It actually it's the same as this, but HTML treats it as truthy, right? So the component, when it receives this value, the scope is actually going to be something like
Hey, Josh, you should probably actually be using type instead of set. I
Hmm?
think. Can map define has a type function as well. I think
Okay.
that's probably what you want in this scenario.
That would be even better if it works the way I expect it to.
Yeah.
So it'll set this value, but keep in mind that this isn't truthy. So what we do is we use this set converter, or I guess I should be using a type converter to specify that this means that it's going to be a true value. So this sets either true or false, depending on what's set here through this. So
Yeah, Josh,
yeah?
you'll probably touch on it while you're diving into editable, but some people also want to see the converge, the converter as Boolean as
Okay.
well.
Uh,
You have some requests to see it.
oh, this is in. This is the converter. This is a fat arrow function in ECMAScript 6. Translates roughly to function.
So you're actually using ES6 in this app?
Yep, we use ES6 all over the place, especially since I got
Nice.
there.
Awesome.
So all it does is it returns true or false, whether it's a string, and otherwise whatever the value is. The kind of special case of strings to make all strings truth. And then anything else just gets treated as a truthy. I could also do bool. But I didn't really. I don't know why I didn't do that, but this is just it would do the same thing. It's a pretty handy utility. I'm using this all over the place. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, great. So moving on, the rest of this component is really just a click handler and a double click handler. I'm not going to go into the details of all this because it turns out that the way that this is specified is fairly intricate. But the interesting thing here is that all I really do is I get a click, and I check all these values, and depending on what I check, I simply set a value in the scope. I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm not going into the DOM. I'm not like touching the data directly or doing weird things. I'm really just kind of editing the things that are in my scope. I'm not like going to parents or anything like that. The double click, same thing, and the double click implements this behavior. So you can see that in order to remove a vertex, all I do is I grab the event that Google fired, and I find that vertex, and I just take it out of the path. And you'll see everything updates automatically. And that's the entirety of the events object for this component.
Hey, Josh, I have a question.
Yes.
Could this not have been implemented in the scope in the view model itself, like this click? Or I guess you're hitting DOM. You have to check the DOM stuff.
What do you mean, the double click stuff?
What's just the click or the double click? You could have put that in the view model, maybe, and done everything within the view model itself, within the scope.
Well, this is what's actually deciding what the clicks mean, So I wouldn't put it in the view model if it's just like if I had more logic that's simply setting values in the view model, I would probably do that.
Well, you have to touch the DOM here, right? You're like looking at the target field in order to determine it.
I'm not really. I'm just grabbing. All this is doing is grabbing the field itself from the event target, just so I know what I clicked on.
Yeah, but since you're interacting with the event object so much, I think that's probably the answer. Usually, if it's like,
Yeah.
if the result of a click is something that is independent of the DOM, then you put it in the view model. It's a better place for it. But because it directly uses the DOM, this is more of an event function.
Yeah. This is just flopping things around. I don't know. Maybe it should. I don't put a lot of things in my view model for the record, but maybe I should.
Good
Um,
try.
Anyway, so in an actual application, this would be replaced with a model definition for the new field itself and such. And but for now, I'm just using CanMaps. So then, and I think this is the coolest part of all this. You have this is a mustache template. And this does the bulk of the heavy lifting in this entire component. And it does the bulk of the heavy lifting simply by gluing together the pieces of the data that was passed in. So for each farm, I grab each G-link, and I see that a G-link is a marker, which is this little thing over here. And I also generate a circle as a sibling with the same latitude and longitude that comes from the G-link that I'm iterating over. I grab the title. I set an icon directly just in my template. I don't need to have this in the data. I can just set in my template what icon I should use. This does go into the scope, though. I use the editable property to determine whether it's draggable. And then I do the same thing for the circle. And these Gmaps map, Gmaps marker, Gmaps circle is the juicy part. And the nice thing is they map pretty much directly to the standard as defined Google Maps API. So this Gmaps map is just a wrapper around. This is google.maps.marker, and so on and so forth. There's 4 of these right now, but I found that this was so mechanical, and I'll show you what I mean by how mechanical it is. It was so mechanical to write these that with a little extra time, I could probably do something like, say, parse this and generate the entire Google API as CanJS components, or have some small DSL that defines how I map properties together, because the APIs change slightly when you go into components. But the compelling thing here is all I do to get the map rendering how I want it is I say, oh, I want a marker here, and I want it at this latitude and longitude, this title. I want a circle here just to show the range of the sensor that I placed down, right? The sensor in my data. And then I iterate over each field, and I define a polygon with this path, which is the series of latitude and longitude things. And you'll see that I can also do this templated editable. This will actually change the scope of the polygon to set it editable or not, simply by going through the template object, through the template itself. Any questions about this one before I move on? I can show, for example, the effects of. So you see this editable property that is all over the place, right?
Yeah.
That is. I believe it's this property. There it is. As long as I can edit, I can do all these things, but as soon as I I don't know why I can still edit. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so the polygon can still add stuff. I guess I gotta add that, but you can see I can no longer drag this guy around. I shouldn't be able to drag this one though. I don't know what happened there.
Hey, Josh, were you going to show the marker components?
Yep, I can show one of the components now. So this makes sense, by the way. This template here, how much work it takes to actually render this map.
Yeah, it's pretty cool that it does. It's not what you would think by looking at it.
Yeah, it's very
So now let's look at. So I have like a bit of a library here with these four components. And the simplest one is probably the marker, so I'll just go over that one. Most of them look about the same.
Hey, actually, I have a question, Josh.
Yes.
Go back to your template for a sec. What is the need for the data helper, since you're already using, cross-binding attributes? Why did you also need to use that data helper for glink?
This is so. You'll see in the click handler here. I don't know if I need it for glink, actually. I just kind of ended up putting them in there because I needed it for one of them, so I just shoved it in all of them. But I need the data for the field because that's how I determine what field I'm clicking on right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is kind of so. I think what Matthew was saying is if you did use can.Click, then that data is that part of the current part of the scope in the template? Because then that data would just be sent in the.
I see what you mean. So you mean like something like you just can.Click. Something like that?
Yeah, and then whatever you're setting as field there would be the third parameter to that event handler.
Got it. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Maybe I should do that instead. I haven't used can.Click a lot with components, so I use it in some other places though.
Cool.
Awesome. So going to markers.
Also,
yeah.
Mikhail added one comment that kind of makes sense. In your as Boolean converter, you said shouldn't the string false be treated as false?
No, that's truthy in HTML.
There you go.
Because so
yeah, false would just be omitted.
It's actually the exact same thing as this. So what you're going to see is an empty string, which should be truthy.
I don't know if that's true of content editable. I'll work on something related to that.
I don't know, but this is the case. Yes, good.
Yeah. Yep. Good.
Okay. So now I arm myself with my documentation reference for marker. Cool. So there's marker options and all that stuff. So what do? I set the API. So I want a title, an icon, draggable, and I can really go over all the properties here, but I don't currently map them because I'm not programmatically generating this yet. But the structure of Google Maps classes is pretty straightforward. You have a constructor that's like right. Then you have a series of methods, which are you usually have a get, set, property. So these are all there. You have some method for miscellaneous things, and then you have, what else do you have? I think that's it. Yeah, you have getter setters and some kind of other method if you have auxiliary things. Then you have events, which you have two types. You have regular events, so something happened, and property name set. Changed, yeah. So you have the click, which is something happened, and then you have property changed, and these can all be hooked into. Let me go to a JavaScript mode that doesn't link. There we go. So you can do google.map.event.add_listener. So this is all pretty straightforward, kind of consistent across the board, across pretty much every single one of these objects. Looks kind of like this. Which means our job is fairly simple. So we are going to say that right, so that's going to determine the tag name. So you just set things in the scope according to the name. Right? Let me just do this. So we want to do this, right? For depending on the methods, if it's a property setter, we just make people go through adder or attribute. Right, in the marker here. So this is the API for getter setters, and then the API for methods. And then we want to be able to do
Oh, you have this working, really?
Mm-hmm.
I knew that you wrote this. This isn't in. Is this in minor currently?
What part?
CanJS minor, having your methods on there.
Oh no. That's not in yet. But I just did it by
You got
hand.
some custom CanJS stuff going on. I see.
It's not quite safe the way I hacked it in here. Like the version in minor, the version that is in my pull request is safe, and then that'll be much nicer. But for now, I just kind of wrote a proxy thing. And then because these are consistent, we're just going to forward these events so that you can listen to them straight off. So clicks on the marker object are going to get forwarded as clicks on the marker component with the data from Google's API in the event, right? And so that's basically how this entire component works. It's really just kind of programmatic glue. You'll see that I have the events that I want to take. These are the events that I want to listen to. Whenever instantiates, I put it in the events object. I know I put it directly in the events object because this will convert it to an object, and because nothing outside of events needs access to that marker. I add the listener, set this a flag. That's just for utility, so I don't put it in the view model either. I removed event so that I can clean up any work that I did. And then I have to remember this. I go for each event. I do an add listener, and I'm going to trigger the same event in this element. Right? So whenever there's an event on the marker object, I'm going to take that entire event and just pass it right through to the element itself. This, for you who are not familiar, is what are they called? Splats?
Yes, I believe.
Yeah, it's like basically this puts all these args in an array. Like it takes all the arguments, shoves them into an array, and this is the same as this element dot trigger dot apply. You know, blah. I don't want to type this. That's why I wrote it this way, because I don't want to type that. I do this one because the position is actually split into this one object. So in order to flatten out latitude and longitude into properties, I write a custom listener for position that will set it as separate properties. And then here's more of the getter. Here's more of the this sets up the listeners on the scope and the event so that the properties will get two-way bound to each other. So it's kind of dense code, but really it's kind of straightforward to write. And that's it. It's really just glue that exposes the Google APIs in this kind of direct manner. The other components work exactly the same as this. The code looks almost identical. Like I said, I feel like I can just auto-generate most of this stuff, but I haven't put in the time to do that yet because there's still some issues in how I'm doing things here that I want to hash out before automating it. The end result is you just have a bunch of components. And these let you just drop in maps into the page. Let you write this. You can even like go to this reference, and as long as you have a general idea of how the components are being generated, you don't even have to like look at the component itself. You can just assume like, oh, fine, they flatten this stuff out into latitude and longitude, and then the zoom goes directly to the zoom property over here, so you can look at zoom here. That's basically it. Any questions? Anything I should show? Is this confusing? Does it look cool? Do you hate it? If before anyone asks, I need to ask for permission. There's been a lot of talk of possibly open sourcing this eventually, but if we can, we will. And if I can't, then you should be able to write this too, because now you know how to do it.
I think you just pretty much
Yeah, well put. Well put. There's been one big question that it seems a lot of people are asking, which is, Matt, did you trim your beard?
Yeah.
What happened?
The wife got tired of it.
Oh, the wishes of the woman. No, any other serious questions for Josh?
I just have one small comment. ES6 syntax, to use that, you have to be using IE9.
Ooh, I got some echo.
I think that was close.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I was just saying, to use the ES6 syntax like you were using, just let people know, because you're using tracer, yet requires IE9 or above browser support.
All right, I unmuted myself. I can go back to talking now. So you guys will see we're using ES6 syntax, or I'm using ES6 syntax, and a lot of this, you'll see the fat arrows and stuff like that. This is because we're loading stuff with Steel.js, which is kind of making its way to, I don't know, an official public release or something that we bless. Which uses Tracer, Google's Tracer compiler, to translate stuff live and after compilation. So this all gets translated to ECMAScript 5, which, like Matthew said, requires IE9 or above. But it's okay. You probably shouldn't be using IE8 anyway.
Some of us have to.
That's a good point. Okay, cool. I think I'm going to call it an end, but thank you very much, Josh, for sharing that with all of us. I just think it's awesome how easy it is to create a Google map.
Yeah.
With some luck, we can open source it, or somebody copies what you did and open sources it to make this process easy for everyone else. And otherwise, we'll see you guys next Friday. It'll be another easy presentation next Friday, something that hopefully you'll learn a lot from, and should be pretty easy to digest. And then, yeah, so thanks, everybody. Thanks, Brian and Matt, for being on as well. And see you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
Good job, Josh.
Bye-bye.
Good job, Josh.